There are two more things you need to know about using formulas before we move on. The first is that from time to time, you may make a mistake in your formulas. For example, if I tried dividing the contents of cell E2 by 0, that's not possible, it's an error. I tap enter on the keyboard and I'll get an error message. Error messages look something like this, often with hashtags or other symbols. Sometimes you'll be warned that what you're entering may be an error. For example, if I do it this way, I get a warning. Do I want to accept their correction? Yes or no? And so if you see things like this, that's okay. This is Excel trying to warn me that I've created something that is producing an error. And in most cases, I'll go to the formula bar to fix that error. And finally, it's important to know that you can change the name of a cell and also the name of a range. So for example, I could click here on F2 and drag all the way down the spreadsheet. And then I could go here to the name box and I could click and I could change the name that's in that box to be something like taxes owed. And I'm not going to put in any spaces there. I'll tap enter on the keyboard. And now that range has its own special name. If I forget what I named that range, I can always click here on this drop-down arrow and it tells me taxes owed. Now, why would that be important? You'll learn that later, but let me give you a quick preview. In my formula, instead of referring just to a cell like E3, I could refer to a named cell or a named range. So I could type in taxes owed and then continue my formula. So taxes owed plus 1. Tap enter, and it's added 1 to each of those cells. Now that's not a great example. Like I said, you'll learn later on in this video and in other videos I've created, how you can use those named ranges in some exciting ways. In this next segment of Excel for Beginners, the complete course, we're going to focus on functions. And many users of Excel constantly confuse formulas and functions. You'll even find those mistakes in other videos on YouTube. But there's a definite difference between the term function and formula in Excel. And the first function that I want to teach you is sum. Let's say I want to add up all of the hours worked and all of the taxable income to be paid to the employees. I could just browse down the sheet here to the bottom of the data. Column D has the hours worked, and I'll click here in D72 and type equals. Again, thinking in my head, D72 equals, and then I'll use my first function, sum. Now, as soon as I start typing a word in that cell, Microsoft Excel searches its database of functions and tries to find the function that I might be looking for. And there it is, it's sum. So Excel is suggesting to me that that might be the one to use. It tells me what it does. It adds all of the numbers in a range of cells. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. But it's possible that I might want this, sum if, or sum ifs, sum product. There's all of these different functions that deal with sums. And some of these are amazing. You definitely need to watch my other tutorials on sum if and sum ifs. Sum product is also great. But in this case, all I want to do is add up all the numbers in a range of cells. So equals sum. And when you use a function in Excel, after typing the function, you put in a left parenthesis. As soon as I do that, Excel gives me a pop-up with some suggestions. It's trying to help me and guide me in writing a good formula using this sum function. So Excel is expecting to have a number and then a comma and another number. So I could put in a number and then another number to be added together. Let's say 5, 6, and then I should put in my right parenthesis, although it's not necessary. And then I could tap enter and it adds those two together. But in this case, I don't want to add 5 and 6. I want to add this entire column. So how do I describe this entire range of numbers that I want to add up? Well, if you remember, we can describe a range by using the top left corner and then the colon and then the lower right corner. In this case, it's all just in one column. So D2, and then I'll go back down here. So D2 and then the colon, so through. I want to sum D2 through D71. I should put in a right parenthesis, but I don't have to. I'll tap enter on the keyboard. There's the grand total hours worked by the employees. Let's look at another way to do the same thing. Instead of typing the cell references, I could just say this cell and type equals sum left parenthesis, and then I could have clicked and dragged to select the entire range, all of the numbers that I want to add up, and then back down in my formula, I could have tapped enter and gotten the same results. Now, because the sum function is so common in Microsoft Excel, they've added what's called the AutoSum function. So instead of even typing that formula at all, I can just select the cell beneath the data that I want to sum up, and then I simply go here to the Home tab, Home ribbon. In the Editing group, this symbol stands for AutoSum. So I'll click that, and Excel automatically figured out what I want to add up, D2 through D71. Tap Enter, and it's done. So in many cases, AutoSum is the fastest, best way to do that. At this point, I probably should type something here like totals, colon, and maybe I could click on it and go to the Home tab, Font group, and make it bold. Maybe I go to the Alignment group and change it to be aligned right. And now I could do the same formula, AutoSum, for taxable income. Or instead of redoing the formula, I'll just click on D72 and I'll use the autofill handle to scoot that over and the formula adjusted. Because these are relative cell references, they don't have dollar signs. When I autofilled it over to the right, those cell references adjusted and it worked beautifully. In addition to the sum function, there are some other functions that are pretty common and important. For example, we can calculate the average. Let's do that. With cell D73 selected, I'll type equals, this cell equals average, and you can see that I do get similar helps as I did with sum. Excel explains what this is. It also can tell me about these other average functions, but I'll stick with the generic average. Now that I've put in a function, I need to put the left parenthesis, and I'll put in my range, D2 through D71. Tap Enter on the keyboard. There is the average number of hours worked by this group of employees in the last month. I can autofill that to the right, and there we have the average taxable income. Now, if you remember, we set up a named range for the data here in taxes to be paid. Let's look at how named ranges work with formulas and functions. So here on F72, I'm going to say to myself, F72 equals the sum of, and I'll put in a left parenthesis. It's looking for a number. I'm just going to type in taxes owed, and then I'll put in my right parenthesis. And notice Excel recognizes taxes owed. Oh, you want to add up all of the taxes owed. And Excel knows what that means because I named that range. So now when I tap Enter, it just automatically sums up everything in the taxes owed range. I can do the same thing with average. So F72 equals average, left parenthesis, taxes owed. Tap Enter, and it figures it out. Let's look at three other important and common functions in Microsoft Excel. We're going to calculate the highest hours worked, the lowest, and then also we're going to count the number of employees. So here, I'll type highest, lowest, and number of employees. Okay, how am I going to figure this out? If I want to know what the highest amount of hours worked was out of all of these employees, and I also want to know the highest taxable income of all of these employees, there's got to be a good way to do that in Excel that's easier than just scanning and looking for the highest number. Fortunately, there is. There's a function called max. So in my head, I'll think D74 equals max, left parenthesis, and then I just need to describe the range of cells to look in. I want to find the highest number, the max number in this range, D2 through D71. I should put in my right parenthesis, but I don't have to. Tap Enter, and the highest number of hours worked in this month by this group of employees is 208. I can autofill that over to the right, and I'll just go to both columns now, to the right. And now we know the highest taxable income amount and the highest amount of taxes due. Let's do the same with lowest. I think to myself, cell D75 equals, instead of max, I'm going to put min. And you can see Excel's giving me hints, giving me suggestions. Min returns the smallest number in a set of values. It ignores logical values and text. So equals min, left parenthesis, D2 through D71. Tap Enter, and there's the lowest amount of hours worked. I use the autofill handle to extend it over to these other columns of data. Our last common function that I'm going to show at this point in the video is count. I want to count the total number of employees. Now you might be saying, don't we already have that? Yes, we do. It's right here. But in some cases, you don't have that, or you want to count different parts of a spreadsheet. So it's important to know this. In my head, I think D76 is equal to count. And there are different types of counts, count A, count if, count ifs. Definitely watch my other videos on those different functions. But for now, just count. And you can see what it does. It counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So left parenthesis, once again, D2 through D71, right parenthesis, tap enter, and it counts up 70 different cells in that range that have numbers. If I wanted to, I could autofill this over, but it's just going to give me 70 again. So those are the 5 or 6 most commonly used functions in Microsoft Excel. If you want to learn more functions in Excel, check out my other videos. I have lots and lots of different functions that I show in those other tutorials, and there's more to come in the future. In this next segment, we're going to focus on how to modify the formatting in the spreadsheet, including how to format numbers and text. We'll also look at formatting cells, rows, and columns, and a couple of tricks that will help you do your formatting more effectively. We're going to format some of these numbers. Notice that it's hard to tell the difference between money, dollars in this case, taxable income, and just regular hours worked. They all just look like numbers. So let's change the formatting so it's obvious what we're dealing with. To do this, I'm going to click on column C. It's going to select the entire column. And then here on the Home tab, Home ribbon, in the number group, I can change the formatting. Right now, it's just general formatting. That's the default. But if I click on this arrow, I can change this to be currency. Now you can clearly tell the difference between the data in column C and the data in column D. Now there are times when instead of using currency as the number format, you might want to use accounting. Let's look at the difference. When I click on accounting, I still get the dollar sign, I still get commas and decimals for the cents, but the dollar sign is separated from the numbers. I think it just makes it a little easier to see the numbers without getting confused by the dollar sign. So those are 2 different ways to indicate that we're dealing with money in these columns. Same with this one here. I'll switch that also to accounting. Now there are other number formats that you should look into, including dates and times, percentages, fractions, and more. Watch my other tutorials to learn more about the different number formats. What about text formats? I could just leave my text as general format, or I could go down here and select text. And in Excel, by default, when you have text entered in a cell, it will align to the left of the cell. So all of this text is aligned to the left. If Excel interprets what you type as numbers, generally speaking, it will align to the right in the cell. So you can see all of these numbers are aligned to the right. These names are aligned to the left. But you can change some of that if you want using the alignment options and also by changing the number or text formats. There are also some more formats. You can click here to see what those are. You can set up some custom formats. There's different time and date formats that are worth checking out. I'm going to cancel, and let's look at some other ways that we can format our data, and especially let's look at how to format columns and rows in Excel. Let's say I want to format this entire first row so that everything in that row is bolded. I think that's a good idea in this case because I'd really like to set apart that row so that people can tell it's not really part of the actual data. These are column titles or labels. So having selected row 1, I'm going to click on the Home tab, Home ribbon. In the font group, I'll just click on this bold symbol. Now that entire row is bolded. And if I were to go to, let's say, cell I1, and if I type something there, you can see that it comes in bold, formatted just like the rest of this row. Other ways that I could format rows include changing the alignment of the cells in a row. So here on the Home tab, Home ribbon, in the alignment group, I can click this button to center each cell in row 1 within its column. If I wanted to, I could change the background color for the row, and there are many other format options for rows and columns in Excel. If you'd like to learn more about those, please watch my many tutorials that cover formatting in Excel. Next, I want to show you a shortcut you can use when you're trying to format columns, rows, cells, etc. in Microsoft Excel. Let's say you get a cell formatted just the way you want, and then later you decide you would like to also format other cells in exactly the same way. One trick that you can try is select the cell that has the formatting you want, and then go to the Home tab, Home ribbon. In the clipboard group, you can click this format painter. With that clicked, whatever you click on next will take on the same exact formatting as the active cell. So I'm going to click here on James. James is now centered and bolded. Now if I click on Freddie, it doesn't work because the format painter now is deselected. If you want to be able to click multiple times and apply the same formatting, all you have to do is, again, select the cell that has the formatting you want, and then double-click on the Format Painter. And now you can click, 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 just continue to click and add the new formatting to the cells. You can also apply the formatting to a whole range. I'm going to undo all of that with Control-Z. One other formatting trick that you might want to know is you can use what's called auto format. But first, you need to add it here to the Quick Access toolbar. To do this, just click up here on the Customize Quick Access toolbar button and go down to More Commands. And then here you can switch from Popular Commands to All Commands, and then just browse down until you find Auto Format. There it is. So with it selected, I can click Add, and now it will be added to the Quick Access toolbar. I click OK, and here it is. To use the Auto Format tool, all I need to do is click somewhere in my data, and then go up here and click Auto Format. I can browse through the options for the different formats. If I find one that I like, I can just click on it, click OK, and that format is added to this spreadsheet. I'm going to undo that. So those are some of the most important and most common formatting options that we have in Microsoft Excel. In this next segment of Excel for Beginners, the complete course, we're going to look at how to create some basic charts. In Excel, there are a few different ways to create charts. Let's look at one of the very easiest. And to do this, the first thing I want to do is make sure I can see the important data. So I'm going to go down here to the zoom slider, and I'll click and slide that to the left. And then I'm going to click and drag to highlight the data that's important to me. In this case, I don't really need the tax rate. I also don't need the totals and the average, etc. here below. Just all of that data there. Hold the Alt key and tap F1. And look what Excel did. It did its very best to create a chart that makes some sense. Because I selected all of the data, Excel is trying to figure out a way to show all of it in one chart, and it's kind of hard to do this. But you can see across the bottom here, I have a list of names, employee IDs, and then the bars show hourly wage, hours worked, taxable income, taxes to be paid. And this is all color coordinated. If I want to, I can click on the chart and then go up here to Chart Design, and I could change the chart type. So instead of this stacked column chart type, I could switch to a clustered column, click OK, let's see how that looks. And if I don't like that, I can go back to Chart Design, change chart type, and we could try a pie chart or some other chart. Because I selected all of the data, this is going to be very difficult to chart all of it all at once. I really should chart only a very specific amount of data. But I wanted you to see how to quickly add a chart based on the data in your sheet. Once you have your chart, you can go up here to Chart Design, and you can add some chart elements. For example, I could add a chart title. I could put it above the chart if I want to, and then I could just triple click on the text there to select it, and I'll just title this Summary Chart. I could also add other chart elements like axis titles, a horizontal axis title, and I could also add a primary vertical axis title. Like I said, this chart is too much. It's too much information in one place, but in many cases, you'll be creating a simple spreadsheet, and holding Alt and tapping F1 will produce a chart that's very useful to you. If you'd like to learn more about charts in Microsoft Excel, please watch my many other videos that focus specifically on creating charts in Excel. In this next and final segment of Microsoft for Beginners, the complete course, I will show you the print options and the publishing options that you have in Microsoft Excel. So let's say, with the data that's in this spreadsheet and with this very confusing chart that I've made, let's say this spreadsheet is ready to be printed, to be handed out and published for its intended audience. And the first question that I need to ask myself is, will the data in this spreadsheet actually fit on a printed page? It may not. To help with that, you can go to the File tab and go down to Print, and that will give you a print preview here at the right. And it looks like my data fits pretty well on this page. If I scroll down, I can see that page 2 is just more rows of data. Page 3 is part of my summary chart. So that actually worked out pretty well. But if you remember, I had entered the word hello here in the upper right. I'm going to go back into Excel, add that back in, and now I'll go to File, Print, and now take a look at the results. I have page 1, but if I go down, there's page 2, and then there's page 3 with hello sitting there and with my chart. So if I want to make sure that this column also is included with the rest of the data, there's some changes I need to make. I need to prepare this spreadsheet to be printed. One way I could fix this is to go to the Page Layout tab, and in the Page Setup group, I could click on Orientation and switch the orientation of the spreadsheet from Portrait to Landscape. In many cases, that will solve your printing problems in Microsoft Excel. So now when I go to File, Print, look, all of my data fits horizontally on one sheet, except for my chart. If I go down to page 2, that's what it looks like. We've got page 3, and page 4 is part of a chart. So I still have the problem of the chart, but at least the data here is fitting horizontally on a page without having to go to another horizontal page to the right. Another thing you can try when working with printing options in Microsoft Excel is you can go to the View tab and switch from normal workbook view to page break preview. When you click that, it will show you where your pages are. So this is page 1, page 2, page 3, and it gives you these blue dashed lines that you can click on and drag. So I want to try to move the page break to be here to the far right side beyond my crazy chart. Let's switch back now to the normal view, and I'll do File, Print, and let's take a look. I used to have 3 pages or 4 pages worth of data to print. Now look, I only have 2 pages. This is page 1, and the chart fits very nicely with the data. When I click this button to go to page 2, there's page 2. So this is the best print preview that I've seen so far. At this point, I just need to decide how many copies I want to print. Let's say 2. I need to make sure I've selected the correct printer. I don't actually have a printer set up, so it's going to print to PDF, but generally you would click here and select your actual printer from the list. There are some settings to think about. I could print only the active sheets, so sheets that I've been working on that are active, or you could print the entire workbook. The other option is to print a selection. So if I go back to the spreadsheet, I could click and drag, I could leave out employee ID maybe, and just get this selection, and then go to File, Print, and switch from Print Active Sheets to Print Selection, and that's what it will look like now. I think I'll go back to Print Active Sheets. If you want, you can choose to print only page 1, or if I had a longer spreadsheet, I could print pages 5 through 7, whatever you want to do there. You can adjust the orientation if you want, the page size, etc. There is a very interesting option here at the bottom, Custom Scaling. If you want, you can click on this and you could choose Fit Sheet on one page. It will shrink the printout so it fits on one page. So I click that, and now the entire spreadsheet fits only on one page. So that is an option. Just keep in mind, if you have a lot of data, it's going to be tiny. It'll be hard to read. Okay, at this point, I'm going to click Print. Now remember, I have no printer, so it's going to be printing to a PDF. And this is a good option, whether you have a printer or not. If you want to turn what you see here into a PDF that you could email to people, you could publish it to the web, you could include it as an attachment in an email to someone, this is a really good option. So I'll click Print, and it asks me, where do I want to save this PDF? I'll save it to my Downloads folder, and I'll give it a file name and click Save. Now if I look in my Downloads folder, here it is. I can open it up, and I have this beautiful PDF that's tough to read. So those are the basics of printing documents in Microsoft Excel. And you can use the Save as PDF to publish your document to the web if you'd like. Other ways you can publish your document include clicking this Share button in the upper right. I might want to upload my document to OneDrive. Once I've done that, a copy of the document will be online and I can easily share it and send it and publish it. If you want to learn about OneDrive, please watch one of my tutorials about Microsoft OneDrive. We also have the ability to attach this workbook as an Excel workbook or as a PDF. So those are some good share options. And then also here on the File tab, if I choose Save As, that's another way to save to OneDrive. But also, look what I can do. Here where it says Excel Workbook, I can click this arrow to change the kind of file that this is. I've been working in Excel, and this is an Excel workbook, but I could save it as another type of Excel workbook. For example, a macro-enabled workbook. You'll learn more about that as you watch more of my videos. You could also save your workbook as an HTML web page, which is an interesting option. You could save it as an Excel template. You could save it as a CSV file, which is a powerful option. And once again, we do have an option to save it as a PDF. So it's important to be aware of this drop-down and the ability that you have to save your finished workbook in other formats. So congratulations, at this point you have completed the Excel for Beginners complete course. At this point you have everything that you need to know to use Excel effectively. Yes, there's more that you could learn, but you have all of the basics that you need to be successful. If you want a copy of this workbook that I've created, look in the description below the video. If you want, you could download it and just go to sheet number 2 and then follow along with my video, watching it again and doing each step one at a time. And then you could compare it to what I did on sheet 1. If you're ready to take your next step in your Excel journey, I recommend that you next watch my Beginner's Guide to Microsoft Excel. You may have already seen that, but if you haven't, it's important to watch that video because it is a nice short overview of some of the basics that you've seen here, but also with some additional new content. In the